the Stone Hump Tag, the Angels,
I hate them.
Silver Knight Leader, Alva and Zuli, and the Merkmen. At the end of the world, much is explained, for characters are ripped here from all ages, all cycles, without too much regard for context.
Oh.
And some, like the Dragon Slayer armor, even came from our age, an age that ended long ago.
Yeah,
This
I
armor
like their
has
shield
seen
a bunch.
it all. Once, it was worn by a legendary Dragon Slayer, and it lost its master, but it retained the memory of the fights it had against the Archdragons. Memories that were so potent, the armor
cool.
itself, imbued with a soul, admittedly, still remembered their sporting hunts. And left behind in Lothric, it came to be manipulated by the Pilgrim Butterflies, dark beings that may well be counterpoints to the Angels that we'll get into later, who settled there as Lothric's age drew to a close. And now, deep in the abyssal swamp, the armor, it reads, was defeated by the champion of Ash in Lothric and was left ages to rust, until it was possessed once again by the memory of the hunt. And why I
So there isn't even someone, like, really in it, necessarily? It's just the actual armor itself has kind of a soul in a way? Maybe there is someone inside of it, but that's kind of cool. I was always wondering about that when I was playing, like, oh, why is it called, like, the dragon armor? But I guess it's just the armor is so legendary that it doesn't really matter who's inside of it if there is anybody inside of it.
Start the video with this armor is because I really want to talk about how ages have passed. Remember when you placed the cinders and you were teleported to a ruined shrine? Everything and everyone here in the Dragheap, including Gale, including Lap, they might not have done these things, but they still made it to the very end of an era. And of course, a couple more minor characters made it here, though their stories have always been just below the surface.
One was a wayfaring knight on an endless, forbidden search. Only the abyss granted closure, if not reunion with his beloved.
Honestly, most of us probably only know Alva as that one red phantom who invades in Irithyll, but he's featured in 2 games now, and he has a story worth telling, although admittedly, this is a story that the game explicitly tells us for once. There's not much guesswork to be done here. So this is a tale of 3 characters, Alva, Saint Serata, and Zuli the Witch.
Okay.
Alva was a wayfaring knight who made it his quest to search for a cure for Saint Serata's sickness. He fully dedicated himself to this cause to the point where he eventually punished himself for his failures. His search would end up being quite famous, for many bards would eventually sing tales of his travels and, of course, his involvement with the witch. Zuli is the witch, someone referenced to employ heretical magical crafts, which are said to be widely misunderstood, forcing her to wear.
The first time I entered the ringed city and I stood on the steps and I got absolutely decimated by a million arrows. I didn't even see it coming. I was literally just standing on the steps looking at the city like, whoa, and then all of a sudden I was dead. Holy shit, that was so funny. I think we have a clip of that. That was that was a good time. Yeah. Oh. Man, I could do an entire video that is literally just clips of me dying in weird ways in Souls games. Gosh. They got creative with it.
Wear a veil when she travelled, rather than the pointed hat she would wear sometimes with a deep, unspoken sense of pride. Zuli heard of Alva's dedication to Saint Serata and decided to use all manner of tricks and deceit to ruin him. Perhaps she was trying to demonstrate the fragility of faith, or that dedication of man is ultimately a pointless thing. And so, her witchcraft assumedly played a part in this, but we also hear that she intended to seduce Alva. Zuli, however, never loved anyone, nor was she loved in return. But, as it turns out, in trying to seduce him and trying to make him fail, it's as if she accidentally found some admiration for the man. In the end, Alva would not find a cure for Saint Sarata's sickness, and as a result, racked with guilt and remorse, he relinquished his knighthood. However, he and Zuli the witch eventually both found their purpose in life in each other. Zuli, as unloving as she was unloved, became Alva's closest supporter, and Alva, despite failing his saint and his purpose, would accept the aid of the witch who once plotted against him.
That's cool.
And that's the story in a nutshell. But one more thing, Alva is named Seeker of the Spurned in Dark Souls 3, which is an odd title, because to spurn something is to reject it with disdain, and the only real candidate for that in this story is Zuli, who was spurned as a witch. So if he's the Seeker of the Spurned, then at this point of the story, in Dark Souls 3, he must logically be seeking Zuli, and the implication, I think, is that they are finally reunited in the Ringed City.
Oh.
Only the Abyss granted closure, if not reunion with his beloved.
The implication in this quote, with Alva's invasion in front of Zuli's set as well, is that Alva was finally reunited with the witch in the city that was losing itself to the Abyss.
So in a way, she kind of succeeded in the seducing. Kind of. In a way, it just didn't end up going the way she intended.
And, as we'll get into in the video about the Locusts and the Ringed Knights, subscribe for that, perhaps the Abyss is not so evil after all. But there's something else I want to talk about. It's that in Japanese, the word for spurned is pulled from imi, which is a noun with a significant degree of nuance. We have to thank Lawmaster Noja for helping us out with this.
Okay.
Because the word imi, which they pulled the word spurned from, in Japanese means something more like a taboo, a shunned person, or, strangely, a purification rite. And obviously, searching for purification or absolution is very different to searching for a shunned person. And I thought it was weird that he was titled Seeker of the Spurned, which is why I brought this up, and I'm glad I learnt about the word imi, because its definitions, both Seeker of the Spurned and Seeker of Purification, both are definitions that fit with the story. Because at once, Alva is the Seeker of Zuli, the Shunned, and reunites with her in the Ringed City, but also he is racked with guilt and remorse over failing to find a cure for Saint Sarata, and as a result he could be searching for absolution and purification and release from his sin, which is a word that Imi implied. Zuli, on the other hand, appears to enter the service of the Judicator Giant, a character we'll talk about later, who enlists, by force or otherwise, the most powerful beings who come down here seeking the Dark Soul.
Oh.
One of these phantoms is Lido of the Silver Knights, who invades us properly in a tower far above the abyssal swamp, swinging that great stone-imbued hammer around. But when you finally get your hands on it, you discover that this giant rock would have made
Is frickin' huge and hard to handle. Oh my goodness. Ugh. I don't like weapons like that. I don't like them.
made Havel proud, and it probably did. Its description says that Lido was a traveling eccentric, someone who befriended both Havel, probably because they both loved rocks, and giants as well, which might explain why he's summoned by the Judicator Giant. I came across a great Lido theory in the comments of this video a few days ago when it was released early for patrons. Salim B comments that Lido could have been the friend that imprisoned Havel the Rock in Dark Souls 1, and it's a great theory looking back. The Watchtower basement key tells us that there are rumors of a hero turned hollow who was locked away by a dear friend, and of course this is a reference to Havel.
That's the dragon tooth, right?
But back then, we assumed that the friend who locked him away was most likely Gwyn, listed as Havel's old battlefield compatriot, and he was the closest thing he had to a friend back then. But I think, if we knew about Leto, then we would certainly be more likely to ascribe this imprisonment to Leto, a Silver Knight, rather than Gwyn, a lord, who might have had more important things to do. What do you think? This theory gives a lot of character to Leto, and one of the most significant things about Leto, for me, is that he is our first mention of a Silver Knight with a name and a personality. Not just these faceless knights that are unquestionably loyal to Guinevere, and even empty cathedrals. This goes a long way to making this order seem more interesting, more human, and I might be less inclined from now on to see them as an army unit and more as individuals who were ultimately driven to serve the kingdom of Gwyn, but who also had agency to leave said kingdom and go on their own travels.
That's
the woman
cool.
who sees all these travelers go by, seeking the ringed city, is the old stone-humped hag atop the dreg heap.
Don't run off and die, love. It's a nicer view with you in it.
Oh.
This old, stone-humped woman, according to her ashes, was once the wet nurse of royalty. So, our question is in two parts. A, why is a pilgrim of Londor here? And B, to whom was she a wet nurse of royalty?
Also, what on earth happened to this city? Was there an earthquake? Like a really bad one? I might have heard about it before, but sucks. It sucks so bad. Oh, piping.
And B, to whom was she a wet nurse of royalty? Well, in Dark Souls 3, the wet nurses are exclusively related to the Lothric royal family, whose wet nurses groomed the inheritors of the throne. But Vadi, you say, the dreg heap is at the end of the world, and this woman could be the wet nurse of any royalty, right? And I thought so too, initially, until I looked more closely at the image for the old woman's ashes. As pointed out by Sanadis K in the last video, she wears the priestess ring upon her finger, confirming that she was in fact wet nurse to the kingdom of Lothric at some point. And considering her knowledge of Prince Lorien's endeavors,
That Prince Lorien spoke of, I'm sure.
we can hazard a guess at the priestess this woman may have once been. But the question that's really important is, who is she now? Well, previously all signs pointed to every pilgrim being of Londor, which was a land devoted to the usurpation of fire, which is a goal that's in stark contrast to the fire-linking goals of Lothric, where this woman apparently came from. And I don't think who she was really matters, because if anyone were to leave their former life behind, it would be those of Londor, because this is a society that was comprised of undead who led quote-unquote unsavory lives. Their land has many references to absolving sin, and their very tome offers salvation to hollows, also conversely cursing all things living.
Oh my god, the Braille. Oh my gosh, I remember giving that lady the Braille books, and she was so friggin'. That was a moment. That was a moment.
This reminds me of the angels in more ways than one. And these angels seem exclusively born of the pilgrims, who are assumedly of Londor, which means that the angels now fly pretty much in the face of what we previously thought we knew about the angelic faith of Lothric, assuming, of course, that these angels are indeed the angels that visited Gertrude and started the angelic faith. So, I suppose I kind of have to take back a lot of what I said in this video, which I recommend you watch, if only to understand why I'm taking some of those things back.
Okay.
In that video, I made the case for the angels being aligned with the linking of the fire, aligned with the Way of White, and the old gods, and the old royalty, and I was citing the white feathers that were common to the heavenly children as a central point of evidence there. However, it appears that the angels now undeniably appear from the pilgrims of Londor, who are against the linking of the fire and instead want fire to weaken so that they can wrest it from its mantle. This is very different. So I think the conclusion I would draw now is that we can finally recognize why the angelic faith was considered heresy in the kingdom of Lothric.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If the angels are agents of Londor and a part of their usurpation of the flame, of course the traditional Lothric pillars would be opposed to the rise of this new faith. But Lothric eventually lost its devotion to the linking of the fire because of Prince Lothric, who was very content to watch his kingdom crumble and the Age of Fire end, and probably was not opposed to the rise of the angels at all.
Rude.
This theory probably still needs a little bit of work, so let's move on. Finally, if you're still here, let's finish on the Merkmen, who largely represent the law on the deep in the Ringed City. So, the Merkmen are described as being possessed by soul dregs which have a grave likeness to the human form. Now, we know that human dregs are the heaviest things in the human body, which sink to the lowest depths imaginable, and I wouldn't be surprised if the soul dregs here appeared in just that way, slowly sinking through the earth over the ages to accumulate here in the Dreg Heap. And while the Deep doesn't get much more elucidation in the DLC, the Abyss does, and the Deep becomes far more significant because it is compared and contrasted to the Abyss. So this video is getting far too long for minor characters, but I think the best possible thing I could leave you guys on is a video by another creator named Jerk Sans Frontieres, who makes this excellent case for the Deep being a defilement of purity in line with many definitions in the Shinto religion. This theory of defilement lines up with the Deep being comprised of stagnating souls, and I think it's worth showing you guys this because I know that this is the theory that's definitely affected a lot of my opinions on the Deep, and it's gonna affect a lot of the theories going forward, so check it out. It really is like one of the best Souls videos out there, not just because of the mentions of the Deep, so please watch it. But back to my stuff. In a day or two, I'll probably release the next video, which was going to be 10 more secrets in the Ringed City, but now it's going to be titled 20 more secrets in the Ringed City because we found out so much. And I think that now, about a week after release, most of you guys have played it, so after the next video, we'll dive right into explaining the entire story.
A week after it being released.
Next video is probably already out for patrons who get a bit of early access, but regardless of whether you're a patron or not, thank you for watching. Check out the other videos, and I'll see you next time.
Man, this dude's just living the life. It's okay, babe. Your little heart. Oh my god. Such a little flubber guy. Yeah, there was a lot going on in the Ringed City. It's crazy how much you miss when you just run by everything. Oh, man. Just slaughtering and killing and getting from point A to point B. Maybe not as quickly as you'd like, but it's been interesting. Even though I don't necessarily want to fight Gale and Frida again, it would be interesting to play Dark Souls 3 again. I'd like to do Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3. Maybe not necessarily in a straight shot, but like maybe. I guess we'll see. But I thought I don't know, maybe that'll be something we do next year. Depending on what other games are coming out, because I'm gonna have to play them between new releases of other games.